Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. My name is Teacher Alastair, and welcome to our free trial class for Wright Homeschool Academy's Mythology course. The purpose of today's session is to introduce you to our course material and give you a feel for a typical class in the course. On that note, if you're not planning on purchasing our asynchronous learning package and are rather interested in signing up for our live interactive classes, quick disclaimer that this recording you're watching right now will have a bit of a different vibe than the other classes you take with us because, of course, as you can see, there are no other students here right now. It's just me. So as we're covering today's material, I'll be asking you several questions along the way, and I encourage you to pause the video at those points to answer them. You can do so any way you like. So if you're watching with somebody else, you can turn to them and discuss amongst yourselves. If you're alone, you can write down your answer, you can speak it aloud, you can consider it in your head, whatever you prefer. And I'll do my best to notify you each time I intend for you to pause the video in this way. You'll see me holding up a 3-second timer with my fingers like this to give you time to hit that pause button. Okay, another note for our aspiring live interactive students, the typical class time is 1 hour. But the pre-recorded trial classes that we offer for each of our courses, like the one you're watching right now, can vary in length. As again, there's no student interaction happening, and also because there's no bamboozle at the end. What is bamboozle, you might be asking? Well, it's a fun, interactive question and answer review game that we've specially created to review the material that we cover in each of our class sessions. So I'll show you what that looks like at the end of today's recording, and you can find the link to the bamboozle game in the description box below. Okay, so the course is divided into 4 sections and covers the most popular, famous, interesting myths from Greek mythology. That's the first 2 sections. Norse is section 3, and Egyptian mythology is section 4. This is the free trial class just for section 1. All right, I'm excited to go through it with you. One last thing before I do, I'll point out to you that it might not be me teaching you the class if you're taking our live interactive class. That's because we do have several educators on our team here at Wright Homeschool Academy. And if you want to learn more about our educator requirements or view our educator profiles, head over to our website and check it out. Again, the link for that will also be in the description. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So, as you heard me mention earlier, we're covering Section 1, Class 1, Greek Mythology. Here is the 25 class course schedule. I encourage you to pause here if you want to take a closer look at the topics and myths we'll be covering. Today's class will be only here week 1, Cosmogony and the Primordial Beings. If you don't know what those words mean, don't worry, we'll be covering them in class today. I promise you'll know what they are by the end of today's recording. All right, the second section of our course is also Greek mythology. As I mentioned, pause here if you want a closer look at the 25 myths we'll be covering in that section. I'll point out that this list is by no means exhaustive. There are lots and lots of Greek myths out there. I wasn't able to get to all of them. But if you're taking our live interactive classes, you can always ask me about them, and they may come up as we study these other ones along the way. All right, here is the 3rd section of the course, Norse mythology. Again, pause here to look more closely. Lots of interesting stuff. As we're going through all these myths, you'll find that we'll cover all kinds of gods, goddesses, demigods, heroes, monsters, fanciful tales. It's really exciting stuff. And here's the 4th and final one. Again, you can pause here. The Egyptian section of the course. Okay, so that's the course schedule as promised. Today's class will be week 1 of section 1, Greek mythology. We're talking about cosmogony and the primordial beings, also known as, maybe more simply put, the creation myth. Seems like a good place to start, right? And on that note, I'll say I've done my best to arrange the myths in chronological order. Of course, they're myths. They didn't happen historically, but I mean the order in which they occurred in the storyline. So, where to start? But the creation itself. All right, so before we even get into the creation myth, perhaps the best place to start is talking about mythology itself. What is mythology? What does this word mean? pause here to consider your answer. Well, if you said that mythology is the study of myths, then you would be correct. That's a dictionary definition of what it means, right? Anytime you see ology at the end of a word, you know we're talking about the study of something. You know, biology is the study of life. Pharmacology, the science and study of drugs and their effect on the human body. Ecology, the study of ecosystems. It goes on and on like this. So mythology is the study of myths. So what are myths? They're stories. They're ancient stories passed down through the generations, largely through what's called oral tradition, meaning passed down by word of mouth, though later they were recorded by scribes. Thankfully, that's the case, so that now we have them here in the future. We can read what the stories that people were telling each other in the ancient past. And the myths do a lot. They explain things to people. They answer life's big questions like, where do we come from? What are we doing here? We being humans, where do human beings come from? What are human beings doing here on this earth? What happens to human beings after they die? And even before that, how should human beings act while they're alive here on earth? So the natural world around us, why are there earthquakes and volcanic eruptions? What's right? What's wrong? The myths shape the culture, and the culture shapes the myths. So another way to think of these myths, these ancient stories, would be to think of them as part of these ancient religions. So not the typical religions that come to mind when a modern person like us hears the word religion, not like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, not like these major monotheistic religions where there's this one God and so on. In most of these ancient religions, in fact, all of them, they were polytheistic, meaning they had multiple gods that they worshipped. And their religion was not about orthodoxy. That is to say, it wasn't about believing the correct things, but it was rather about cult. When I say cult, I don't mean it in a negative way, like a modern day cult leader dupes his followers into some kind of scam. But rather, I mean cult in the ancient sense of the word. It's the root word for our word culture that we have today. It's a way of life. It's a way of being, of acting in your day-to-day life and offering honor and sacrifice to the gods. And part of the way that you honored the gods was by telling their stories, learning lessons from them, and where appropriate, emulating the gods' behaviors in those stories. So that's a little bit about what mythology even is. Okay, let's move on from there and talk about cosmology and cosmogony. These are two words that I'm going to define for you now, and then I'm going to be asking you to define them for me. So make sure that you're paying attention and taking notes here. So the study of the structure and changes in the universe is called cosmology. The word cosmology comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. Okay, world to the Greeks, ancient peoples, including the Greeks, just meant everything that exists, not just the earth, but also the heavenly bodies and what's under the earth, etc. Okay, and logia means study of. Okay, it comes from the Greek word logos, meaning word. We've already talked about how L-O-G-Y at the end of something just means the study of that thing, right? Mythology. Cosmology means the study of the cosmos. Cosmos just means the world, the universe. Now, the branch of cosmology that deals specifically with the origin of the universe, like the creation myth, where did it all come from? How did it originate or begin, is called cosmogony. The root goni in Greek means to be born or to come about. Okay, so cosmos, to review, means world or universe, i.e. everything that exists. Logy means the study of something. So cosmology is the study of the world or universe. So what does it look like? What shape is it? What kind of structure is it? What materials is it made of? That's all cosmology. Okay, and then cosmogony, gony meaning birth, means the creation myth. the beginning or origin of the world, the universe, the cosmos, everything that is. All right, so hopefully you've got this down in your notes. I'm going to navigate on to our next slide. So if you want to pause and write any more notes, now's your chance. And I'm going to be asking you, by way of review, what is the cosmos? What does this word mean? If you said it means the world or the universe, you would be correct. Okay, and remember, as we'll see in a moment here, the ancient peoples, including but not limited to the Greeks, had a different concept of what the cosmos, what the universe was. Okay, they did not have in their mind like a giant, ever-expanding universe, light years of distances between planets and stars, and planets are places that other people live, aliens, and they didn't have our modern conception of what we would think of when we say the word universe, okay? But I use the word here to, again, describe everything that exists. All right, next question. What is cosmology? See if you can answer that. Okay, if you said it definitionally means the study of the cosmos, well, then you would be correct, okay? So maybe to be a little bit more specific would be to say, what is the cosmos made of? What does it look like? What shape is it? What are the things in it, etc. And finally, last question to review, what is cosmogony? Cosmogony. If you said it's the beginning or the birth or the origin of the cosmos, also known as the creation myth, then you would be right. This is the ancient people's explanation for where the cosmos came from. How did it come about in the first place? That's our main topic of discussion today. So let's jump into it. In terms of cosmology, you heard me mention on our previous slide that ancient peoples had a very different cosmology from our modern one today, and different from each other in the details. What do I mean by this? Well, let's start here in the bottom right. What you're looking at is a picture from NASA. So it's an image, I should say, from NASA's website showing something that we're probably all familiar with as modern people, the globe Earth. The Earth being a ball floating in outer space, going around the sun in an ever-expanding, humongous Copernican universe. Ancient peoples did not view the cosmos in this way. They did not have this idea in their mind. They did not have a concept of a vacuum of endless outer space. Most of them did not even have a concept of a spherical, ball-shaped Earth. In fact, ancient peoples believed, by and large, that the Earth was flat and stationary, meaning it did not move at all. In many cases, it was supported by something like pillars, a tree, a turtle, things of this nature. And furthermore, that this flat disc, you can picture like a pizza or a frisbee or a dinner plate, that would be what they considered the Earth to be. And it was covered by a dome, a solid dome, sort of like, I've got a paperweight over here, I'll show you, sort of like this, okay? Like a little terrarium almost. So the Earth is the flat disk at the bottom, and then the sky is this solid dome that goes over top. And again, this was basically all ancient peoples from all over the world, as you can see here on screen, whether they're Egyptian, Norse, which again, those are the other mythological traditions we'll be studying in later sections of our course. The Hindus in India, the Mayas in central Mesoamerica, same with the Incas, Navajo, native North Americans. This is the ancient Hebrew cosmology as described in places like the Old Testament of the Bible, etc. And they all shared this in common. Which begs the question, why? Why did all ancient cultures view the cosmos in this way? And the answer is simply, that's the way it appears, okay? If you go outside and stand outside and look around, it doesn't feel like the Earth is moving. It doesn't feel like it's spinning on its axis or revolving around the sun, or that we're in a galaxy moving around. We cannot detect those movements by our senses, by any means of observation available to us here on Earth. And of course, ancient peoples did not have the technology to ascend high up into the sky, gaining enough altitude to get perspective on the Earth from outside of it, like we have today, going out into outer space, taking photographs of the Earth, etc. That's just, their technology had not reached that point. So the short answer is they didn't know. That's the way it looked to them. That's the way it felt to them. The Earth measured flat. It behaved as if it was flat. It looked like it was flat. Therefore, they all assumed it was flat and covered with a dome. Also, if you look up in the night sky, you'll notice that the stars all make perfect circles overhead, and they follow regular patterns, which would seem to indicate that the Earth is at the center of all the cosmos, because everything appears to be revolving around us. That's just the way that it looks. And so naturally, all of these cultures from around the world came to the same conclusion, that indeed the Earth was flat, stationary, fixed, and in a central position, in the center. All right, let's review. I'm asking you, how did ancient people view the cosmos? See if you can answer that. If you said that they viewed the cosmos as a flat disk, that's the Earth, covered by a solid dome of the sky, you would be correct. That's basically true for all ancient peoples, though I will point out that the Greeks were among the first to conceptualize or think of the Earth as a sphere, though they did not consider that the Earth sphere might not be in the center. That didn't come until much later. So under the so-called Ptolemaic system, named after the astronomer Ptolemy, the ancient Greek peoples pictured the Earth as a sphere around which all the other stars, including the sun, revolved. So there's that. Next question. Why did ancient peoples think of the Earth as a flat disk with a solid dome? Why would they think of it like this paperweight right here? Why wouldn't they think of it like the globe, with which we're all very familiar? Your answer? If you said that's how it appears, it just looks that way, it feels that way, it's intuitive, it would be common sense. If you were born into a world where nobody had ever been to outer space, taken a picture of the Earth from outer space, or thought of that idea before, you would think the same thing. You would think that the Earth was flat and stationary and that all the stars moved around the Earth, because that's just the way that it looks. And it made sense to them. Okay, so that's their cosmology. Now let's move into their cosmogony. And if you're following along, you'll remember that means we're talking about the origin, the very beginning of everything. So what did the ancient Greek people think was at the very beginning of everything? Primordial chaos. That's what you can see here on screen. Let's define these words. What does primordial mean? It means at the very beginning. So something in so ancient history as to be going all the way back to the beginning of everything. Okay, primordial. It's an adjective. Chaos is the opposite of order. Order and chaos are opposites of each other. You know, like to be organized. The opposite of that would be to be disorganized. Things are chaotic. They're disordered. It's random. There's confusion. It's craziness. It's a big mess. Okay, you can imagine your bedroom. If you've tidied it all up, put everything where it needs to go, that's ordered. That's nice and organized. But maybe it's been a while since you've tidied it and you've been playing in there and you've made a huge mess and there are toys and clothes and all kinds of things all over the place. Well, that's chaos. Okay. And the ancient Greeks believed that the cosmos began in a state of primordial chaos. So to define it by putting our two words together, primordial chaos is the crazy, disordered, random mess, the very beginning of everything. And to be clear, the ancient Greeks viewed chaos as a bad thing. Chaos is bad. You don't want chaos, you want order. In fact, I would say that this is one of the major themes present not only in the Greek mythology, but all of the mythologies and mythological traditions that we'll study in our mythology course. That is the theme of order versus chaos. Chaos is bad, order is good. Sometimes things come up that are chaotic, and therefore they need to be stopped by the gods who are orderly. Okay, the gods impose order on the natural chaotic world, and that's a good thing. Just like a ruler might bring order, structure, stable governance to a city, and that's a good thing. Okay, so that's primordial chaos at the very beginning of everything. And then all of a sudden, poof, coming out of this primordial chaos, we have this lovely lady right here. This is, of course, an artistic rendition of her. There are lots of them. This is obviously done by a modern person using a computer program. The ancient Greeks would have had various different images in their mind of this being. Her name is Gaia. And Gaia is the Mother Earth goddess. She's actually what's called a personification. And that word, which will come up in every single class pretty much, basically means to take something that's not a person, like say the earth, for example, and turning it into a person. For example, Gaia. So you give the thing a name, a person's body, personality, and tell stories about them. That's personification, very key for not only the Greek myths, but also the other myths that we'll be studying. So Gaia is a personification of the earth. She is the earth. She's the goddess of the earth. If that's confusing and it's like not making perfect sense to you, don't worry too much about it. It's mythology. It doesn't have to make perfect sense because it's not real. And also the ancient Greek people would not have had the same category problems that we have. They don't see an issue with personification in this way. Like, for example, in some parts of the story, you'll see Gaia walking around on the earth. And you might be thinking to yourself, wait, isn't she the earth? How is it that she's walking on the earth? Again, don't try to make it make sense too much. Your head might explode. Okay, so she's a primordial being, meaning she is a person, a being who's alive at the very beginning of everything. And she's associated with fertility, right? Things that are fertile produce life. Fertility, growth, and life. She's one of the first beings to emerge from the chaotic ether at the very beginning. And out of her, because she, again, is associated with fertility, growth, and life, she gives birth to other primordial beings. Okay, and so it all begins. The creation begins. Okay, one of those beings is this guy right here, somber-looking fella. His name is Uranus, or Uranus, if you prefer. Sometimes you'll see an O at the beginning of this, so O-U, Uranus. And he is the god of the sky. So already, guys, we talked about the earth, or the cosmos, rather, being the flat disk of the earth. That's Gaia. And then the solid dome of the sky, that's Uranus, okay? And they're the personifications of those things. It's like taking those things and turning them into people. And Uranus becomes Gaia's husband, and it's through their union that many of the other primordial beings come about. Okay, so that's Gaia and Uranus. Now, as I mentioned, Gaia and Uranus's union produces other primordial beings. They have children together, in other words. Taking a look at them here, look at these beautiful babies. Aren't they so cute and cuddly? Of course not. They're giant, horrible monsters. These ones that you're looking at here on screen are called the Hecaton Kyries. That's the plural for them. So one Hecaton Kyr, two or more Hecaton Kyries. I've tried to put the phonetic pronunciation down here for you. And what the name literally translates to in English is 100-handed ones, because each of these gigantic beings was said to have 50 heads and then 20 arms on each side. So I guess if you do the math, each arm has a hand, each hand has 5 fingers, So that would be 100 fingers. I guess each of those fingers, because they're giants, is as large as like a hand or an arm of a man. It's not literal. It's not as though they had exactly 100 hands. It's just it's like an exaggeration. Sort of like if you go to the mall and it's really busy, packed full of people, and you say, man, the mall was so busy today, there were 1 million people there. You don't literally mean there were exactly 1 million people you counted. You just mean there were a lot. Same thing here with 100-handed ones. They don't mean literally exactly 100 hands, just a lot of hands. Okay, so obviously these guys are chaotic, okay? They don't represent order, they represent chaos. Anything that's got multiple heads is a dead giveaway that it represents chaos, because multiple heads on this one being means that they are not of one mind. They might be thinking two things at the same time. They're unpredictable, they're erratic. That's chaos. Not to mention the 100 hands, quote unquote. Okay, so these are big, powerful, monstrous, chaotic, primordial beings that are spawned by Gaia and Uranus. There are 3 of them. Okay, this is their Gaia and Uranus's first attempt at children. Now, being gods, they are attempting to impose order on the cosmos. So bringing about chaotic beings is not exactly what they're trying to do. So if at first you don't succeed, they try again. Next up, they have these children. Do you know what they are called? If you said cyclopes, then you are right. If you said cyclops, then you're very close. Cyclops is singular. That's one. One cyclops, 2 or more cyclopes. Okay, and their name translates roughly to round-eyed ones or one-eyed ones, because as you can see, they each only have one eye in the center of their forehead, one big eye in the center of their forehead. So at least they only have one head though, right? But they're still giants, and giants are powerful and can cause a lot of death and destruction. And so these are still leaning a little bit chaotic. So these are other primordial beings. They're the second children of Gaia and Uranus. And again, there are 3 cyclopes originally. So 3 hecaton chiries, 3 cyclopes. And then after these, I don't have a picture to show you right this moment, but we'll see them afterwards. Gaia and Uranus have another set of children called the Titans. Now, the Titans are also giant. They're huge. There are more of them than the hecaton chiries and cyclopes. There are 12 of them in total. But they look like humans. They have 1 head, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 hands, 10 fingers, 10 toes. The only thing that makes them different from humans is that they are sort of divine, god-like primordial beings, and they're giant and they're powerful and they have magical abilities. Other than that, though, they're just like us. Okay, so that's going to bring us now to our first reading. Normally, during our live interactive classes, our students would be taking turns reading. But of course, since it's just me, I'll be the one doing the reading here. So the reading is titled Cosmogony Out of the Chaos. According to Greek mythology, in the beginning was primordial chaos. From this state of disorder, Gaia, the earth mother goddess, appeared. She was very fertile and created much life, including plants, animals, and even other primordial beings or gods. Uranus, the sky god, became her husband, and together they had many children. The first of them were the hecaton chiries, or 100-handed ones, and the cyclopes, or one-eyed ones. Then they had 12 sons and daughters called the Titans. Okay, so the top picture here, you can see Gaia, the earth mother, another artistic rendition of her, and the bottom pictures show the hecaton chiries and the cyclopes, the hideous offspring of Gaia and Uranus. And we'll learn a little bit more about the Titans in just a moment. Okay, guys, so that's our first reading. We're just about to jump into our first video clip now. Typically, most classes have 2 video clips in them, one around the halfway point and then one towards the end after we finish the material and just before we play the review game. That can vary, but usually that's the case. I'll be turning off my camera and microphone during the video. I'll also point out that these video clips are really great. They're short They're to the point. They cover all the main bits. The illustrations are excellent. However, they're not perfect. Some flaws I'll just point out are the pronunciations used in these videos are not always on point. So I've done my best to give you the best pronunciations, exactly. For example, hecaton kyries, cyclopes, etc. However, brace yourself for some poor pronunciations by the video narrator. I didn't make the videos, so don't look at me. Other than that, I guess in this particular video, we talked a lot about how the ancient people's cosmology was not like ours with, balls floating around in space. They had, the flat disk, solid dome, this kind of thing. However, the artistic creative license taken by the producers of this video does depict the Earth as a sphere floating in space at the beginning. It's sort of hard for us modern people to get out of that mindset. So I can understand it, but I just want to point out that that's not exactly how the ancient Greeks would have viewed it. Other than that, though, the video is great, and we can get to it. Here we go.
At the beginning of everything, there was only chaos. There were already the elements of what would form the universe, but they were completely mixed, in a massive absence of meaning. This original chaotic period lasted for many ages. Gaia, the Mother Earth, emerged from this primordial chaos, a goddess whose main characteristic was her extreme fertility. The goddess Gaia gave birth to our planet and personified all the earth that covers the world. She gave birth to several primordial deities, such as Pontus, the god of the sea, and Aureus, the deity of the mountains. Gaia gave birth to the god Uranus, a supreme being who would personify heaven, reigning over all things. Uranus made Gaia his wife. During the night, Nyx, the goddess of the night, also emerged from chaos. She crossed the heavens every day, covering it with her black mountain. At dusk, Uranus and Gaia united. The fruits of this union quickly began to hatch. The goddess gave birth to creatures with dreadful features, including Hecatoncheirus, monsters with 100 arms and several heads, and the Cyclops, powerful one-eyed beings. Uranus and Gaia also gave birth to a new generation of gods, powerful beings who would become known as Titans.
Okay, so there you have it. There's our first video clip. Let's move on now and ask ourselves this question. What is a throne? 3 seconds, pause. You could answer this. Okay, well, if you said it's a king's chair, of course you would be correct. I will point out, though, that sometimes when we use the word throne, we don't mean it literally like talking about the chair itself, but rather we're talking about the king's authority. Okay, it's a symbol of the king's authority, or the queen's, the monarch's authority, whoever's in charge. Okay, so you must swear your allegiance to the throne. Obviously, if somebody says something like that, they don't mean you have to promise to be faithful to a chair. They mean is you have to promise to be faithful to the king or the queen. Okay, so by extension, what does it mean to be dethroned? Pause and answer. That's not when somebody steals your chair. We don't mean they come in and steal the chair from you. It means they steal your kingship. They take your position. Another word for this is to usurp. Okay, the reason I'm introducing this vocabulary is because it's going to come up a bunch in our readings and video clips. I want to make sure we're all on the same page, know what these words mean. Okay, so throne isn't just a chair. It's a symbol of the king's authority. If you dethrone or usurp the king, it means you are overthrowing him, replacing him with somebody else, taking the king's authority and position for yourself. All right, and this is a very common theme. You're going to see this happen a lot in Greek mythology. So definitely want to make sure we got this down in our notes. Usurp, dethrone. All right, now a quick reminder about what the ancient cosmos looked like. For the most part, it was a flat disk with a solid dome over top. Again, what you're looking at here is the ancient Hebrew cosmology. So this is what would have been described in the Old Testament of the Bible. And you might notice that there's sort of this compartment underneath the earth. Okay, the underworld, so to speak, literally underneath the earth. It's this giant cavernous thing. The Hebrews called it Sheol. The Greeks called it Hades. Same place, just different names. Okay, here is the Greek cosmos, almost identical to the Hebrew one we just looked at there. You can see that Hades, the abode of the dead, is underneath the earth. Okay, you'll notice, so there's the earth. You've got the gods living in the heavens here, solid dome of the sky. The sun and moon are within the dome, circling overhead of the earth. The Greeks also believe that there is a big river. The name of the river was Ocean, and that it wrapped all the way around the world. Okay, but getting back to the underworld, so there's Hades. You might notice that there's another compartment below it called Tartarus. Okay, and this is like the lowest pit of the underworld. So if you think of the earth is sort of like the lobby of an apartment building that you walk into, and the gods live on the second floor up above. And then there's like the basement level, that's Hades, where the dead go. And then like the B2, like the parking garage underneath of that, that's Tartarus. Okay, so they're all stacked up on top of each other. Okay, it's this very vertically oriented cosmos. Okay, Tartarus is going to become a key feature in our story here. Again, it is the deepest, lowest pit of the underworld. As you can see here, it is a dark place. The sun does not shine down there. It's full of jagged rocks and despair. Dun, dun, dun. And Tartarus is a place reserved for the wicked, people who deserve to be punished and imprisoned for all eternity. Sort of like the later Christian, Judeo-Christian concept of hell, but maybe a little less fiery, a little bit darker. And Uranus, the sky god, if you've been following, threw his children into Tartarus. This is the next event in our storyline. He took them all, the Hecaton, Kyries, the Cyclopes, and the Titans, and he threw them all into Tartarus and chained them up down there. What crime were they being punished for? Well, they were powerful and chaotic, and Uranus feared that they would usurp him. He worried that one day they might decide that they were more fit to rule the cosmos than he was, and that they would use their immense strength and their numbers to overpower him, dethrone him, usurp him, and that was something he could not allow. So he took preventative measures, and winning the Father of the Year award, locked all his children up for all eternity. Great guy. Okay, now if you're an ancient Greek person and you're hearing this part of the story, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, boo, Uranus is a bad guy. How could he do that to his children? That's cruel. That's tyrannical. He's like a tyrant doing whatever he wants for his own benefit, no matter what the cost for others. So immediately they're rooting against Uranus now. All right, so probably something bad is going to happen to Uranus. Maybe, no spoilers, it's a spoiler-free zone. All right, let's introduce our next character to the story. His name is Cronus, or sometimes pronounced Kronos. I've spelled it the simplest way here, C-R-O-N-U-S. You might see it spelled differently, like with a K instead of a C, or a C-H instead of a C, or sometimes N-O-S instead of N-U-S, any variation of those. Okay, they're all the same, referring to the same being, Cronus. He's often depicted, as you can see here, with a huge scythe or sickle in his hand and an hourglass in the other. So maybe you're familiar with the Grim Reaper character, right? A dark hooded figure with a sickle or scythe in one hand and an hourglass in the other, representing death, right? The hourglass represents time, and time will be the death of us all. Right? So that's kind of the imagery there. That's where we get it from. This is also where we get words like chronological. You heard me use that earlier, right? Cronus is the god of time. The Romans called him Saturn. So far we've already got Earth, that's Gaia, Uranus, that's Uranus, and Saturn, that's Cronus. You'll notice as we go along here that we're going to be naming all of the planets in our solar system. Though again, the ancient Greeks didn't view the solar system in the same way. They didn't think we had a solar system. The planets, the word planet in ancient Greek meant wandering star. So they would look up and see these bright lights in the sky. We today would say, oh, that's the planet Jupiter. That's the planet Saturn. And they would say the same thing, but to them, it didn't mean this giant ball of gas in the vacuum of outer space. It just meant light in the sky, like any of the other stars that wandered. It didn't follow the same path as all the others. Okay, so about the figure, Cronus himself, he was a Titan, and he rose up and became the leader of the 12 Titans. And he used his scythe, that weapon that we see here, which is, it's not just a weapon, it's also an agricultural tool. So farmers would use a scythe or sickle to reap their crops, right? When the crops had grown tall enough, like wheat, for example, in the field, they would go out and they would reap and cut them all down and take them back to the barn and use them. And so that's sort of the imagery here for death. Like when your time comes, it's time to be reaped. The Grim Reaper, Saturn, Cronus, all the same character. And Cronus is the hero of this stage of the story because he's the one who dethrones, defeats, usurps his father Uranus to right the wrong of Uranus's crime of throwing his children into Tartarus. And you'll see that I've got the word defeat in quotation marks here in scare quotes. And you'll see why in a moment. Let's just say that Cronus defeats or usurps his father in pretty gruesome fashion. Okay, so spoiler alert for those who are with weak stomachs. This kind of thing is unavoidable in Greek mythology. There are always some very spicy, little racy elements going on in the stories. All right. Now there's going to be a prophecy given at the end of our story. So we should talk briefly about this concept. What is prophecy? What does that mean? You guys can take a moment and answer this question. So I would say prophecy is like a prediction about the future, but it's one that you almost are certain is going to come true. And usually that's because prophecies come from a divine source, like God in heaven or the gods in heaven, or some kind of spirit or demigod, or, you know, some divine messenger tells you something as a human being that you wouldn't normally know about the future. In any event, prophecies are always rather enigmatic, right? They're enigmas, they're sort of riddles. They're usually not very straightforward. It's sort of like reading a fortune cookie. You have to interpret them a little bit. They're very spiritual. They're associated with the divine. And also, this brings about the concept of fate, right? That some things are fated to occur, that they must happen in the future because there's some kind of divine plan for the cosmos orchestrating things so that one or more things will happen in the future. As we'll see at the end of our story, after Cronus defeats Uranus, Cronus receives a prophecy from the ghost of his father, Uranus. And Uranus tells Cronus what awaits him in his own future. That's going to move the story along to the next stage. Okay, so that's going to bring us to our final reading here. It's titled Prison, Payback, and Prophecy. Oh my. All right, once again, I'll be doing the reading here. So Uranus was worried that his powerful new children would dethrone him. So he threw them all into the deepest pit of the underworld called Tartarus. Cronus, one of the 12 Titans, was given a scythe by his mother, Gaia. He used it to defeat Uranus, and he usurped his father's throne. The spirit of Uranus told a prophecy to Cronus that the same thing would happen to him in the future. Ooh. So that's pretty bad news for Cronus, right? So here's the top picture. Cronus holding a scythe, swearing revenge against his father. And here is Uranus, the mighty sky god, dethroned by his own son. So why would Gaia help Cronus? Why would she give him this scythe, which according to the ancient myth was made of adamantine, which is a fake, mythical, not real substance, said to be the hardest thing in the world, harder than diamond even. And the reason that Gaia did this is because she loves her children. She's a mother. First and foremost, she's the Mother Earth goddess. And so she doesn't want her children to be locked up in Tartarus. She didn't sign up for that when she made children with Uranus. And so she also feels betrayed by her husband. And she would rather see somebody else ruling over the cosmos, sitting on the throne in the sky. And by the way, sitting on the throne in the sky means that you are the ruler over the cosmos. You are top dog. You're the sovereign, as they would say. And so Cronus usurps Uranus, and then just when he thinks things are all good, he receives some pretty bad news, a prophecy from Uranus that the exact same thing is going to happen to him, namely that one of his own children is going to usurp him or overthrow him and replace him as the sky god. All right, with that, we're going to go now to our second video clip. Here we go.
The celestial god, when he saw the powerful offspring he had begotten, began to fear being dethroned by them, so he took action. Uranus threw all his children into Tartarus, a dark place in the depths of the earth. Appalled, the Titans beat the walls of Tartarus with violence, trying to escape. They were trapped in Gaia's womb. The revolt of creatures that were so powerful provoked an intense pain in their mother, who suffered terrible aches. Gaia couldn't stand that situation and decided to conspire against her husband. The goddess asked one of her children to destroy Uranus, but all the Titans rejected, except Kronos, the most ambitious, who thought he could perform that task. Kronos receives a scythe made of diamond and headed to the heavens wielding that weapon. In the celestial residence of Uranus, Kronos found the supreme god sleeping on a cloud. With a sharp stroke of his sickle, the Titan castrated his father. Uranus's cry of pain was heard throughout the universe. The skies were painted bright red, the blood of Uranus. Uranus's testicles were thrown into the ocean, and giving their fertilizing abilities, several deities emerged in the waters. Cronus triumphantly returned and freed his imprisoned brothers. As the great hero of the revolt, he was hailed as the new supreme lord of the universe. Cronus didn't free the Hecatoncheires, nor the Cyclops, because he considered them very dangerous. They remained in Tartarus. After the banquet, the new sovereign was visited by his father's specter, which revealed to him a terrible prophecy. He said that, like his father, who had been dethroned by an infamous descendant, Cronus would also lose the supreme throne, overthrown by his own son in a terrible fate.
Okay, so there it is. That's the story. Pretty gruesome, I know. But the fact that Uranus was castrated, as you heard in the video there, namely that his special male parts were cut off, is relevant to the rest of the story. That's why I included the detail. Normally, I shy away from the unnecessary graphic details like that. But as you saw in the video clip, that act created more life, okay? The blood went down from the sky and into the water, and together the blood and the water created new life. And that's going to be important for some of our later classes. But again, this is the no spoiler zone, so I won't say more than that. Okay, guys, so there you have it. Cronus, the Titan, frees his brothers and sisters, his fellow Titans and Titanides, the female Titans, from Tartarus, and they rule over the cosmos with Cronus himself as the sovereign, the ruler over them. But he does not free the Cyclopes nor the Hecatoncheires. He views them, just like his father did, as too powerful, too chaotic, too unpredictable, and therefore too dangerous to set free. And that detail will also be important for, in fact, our next class. Okay. At this stage, guys, this is where we would normally play our bamboozle game. Again, you can see the link on the slideshow here. You can find a link in the description box of this video recording. When you're signed up for the class long term, you can also get access to the slideshow itself and follow the link directly from the slideshow. I'll give you a quick taste, a little preview of what the bamboozle looks like. So here are the questions that you should be able to answer after having taken this class. So what does the word cosmogony mean? What is primordial chaos? Who is this? And tell us one thing about her. What is mythology? And name one thing that myths were used to explain to ancient people. How did all the ancient cultures view the cosmos and why? Who is this guy? Tell us something about him. What are these? Cyclopes. What are these? The Hecaton Kyries. Where were the children of Gaia and Uranus imprisoned? That would be in Tartarus. A couple more questions here. Who is this and what is that in his hand? That's Cronus with his scythe. And finally, what is a throne and what does it mean to dethrone a king? Okay, so those are the types of questions that we would expect our students to be able to answer at the end of the lesson. Okay, guys, so that's it. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed. Reminder that all the links for the Bamboozle, the website, everything you could want, it's in the description box. So head on down there, click on those links, and we look forward to getting in touch with you and learning together. So from all of us here at Wright Language Academy, see you in class.